Hello and welcome. We're glad you have connections with us for this service. Whoever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, we welcome you. Whomever you love, we welcome you. Our website at uutartan.org is a great place to find out about us and the programs we offer. We look forward to meeting you in our Zoom connections. This service begins with our chalice lighting and words by Kimberly Ann Tomzik-Carrison. We are a people of memory. As inheritors of our ancestors' legacy, we hold their stories tenderly, gleaning wisdom from diverse journeys, united in hope for the future. Guide us to trust in love as we kindle this flame together. Bonnie?
Rise, arise, arise. The dawn is here, life is greeting thee. The dawn is here, ever watchful be. Mother Life God, she is calling thee. Mother Life God, she is greeting thee. Rise, arise, arise. Our story for all ages will now be read by Reverend Kristina.
Our story today is We Are Water Protectors, written by Carol Lindstrom and illustrated by Michaela Goad. Water is the first medicine, Nokomis told me. We come from water. It nourished us inside our mother's body. As it nourishes us here on Mother Earth, water is sacred, she said. We stand with our songs and our drums. We are still here. The river's rhythm runs through my veins, runs through my people's veins. My people talk of a black snake that will destroy the land. Spoil the water, poison plants and animals, wreck everything in its path. When my people first spoke of the black snake, they foretold that it wouldn't come for many, many years. Now the black snake is here. Its venom burns the land, courses through the water, making it unfit to drink. Take courage. I must keep the black snake away from my village's water. I must rally my people together. To stand for the water, to stand for the land, to stand as one against the black snake. We stand with our songs and our drums. We are still here. It will not be easy. We fight for those who cannot fight for themselves, the winged ones, the crawling ones. The four-legged, the two-legged, the plants, trees, rivers, lakes. The earth. We are all related. Tears like waterfalls stream down, tracks down my face, tracks down my people's faces. Water has its own spirit, Nokomis told me. Water is alive. Water remembers our ancestors who came before us, she said. We stand with our songs and our drums. We are still here. We are stewards of the earth. Our spirits have not been broken. We are water protectors. We stand. The black snake is in for the fight of its life. At the end of the book, both the author and the illustrator have notes for the people. I'm going to read part of Carol Lindstrom, the author's note, to give some additional context and information. She writes, the Anishinaabe prophecy that speaks of two roads. One road is a natural path. It leads to global peace and unity that embraces the sacred relationship between humanity and all living things. On this path, all orders of creation, mineral, plant, animal, and human, are relatives deserving of respect and care. We are instructed to use our voices to speak for those who have not been given a voice. On this path, there is no black snake. The earth is not damaged, and the grass grows lush and green. This prophecy, known as the Seven Fires prophecy, says that if humans choose the natural path, then we will proceed toward peace and unity and a healthy Mother Earth. The other road is described as a hard-surfaced highway where everything moves faster and faster at an unimaginable speed. On this path, humans embrace technological advancement with little regard for Mother Earth. Many native nations believe this path is symbolized by the oil pipelines, the black snakes that crisscross our lands, bringing destruction and harm. The path leads to a damaged earth. The prophecy is coming to life right before our eyes. Water affects and connects us all. We must fight to protect it.
Kayuwani, kayuwe, kayuwani, kayuwe, wehio, hawine kai, hawiaheya. Kayuwani, kayuwe, kayuwani, kayuwe, wehio, hawine kai. Let us now have some words of inspiration from Reverend Kristina.
Our words today come from Linda Hogan, a poet, and this is called Tear. It was the time before I was born. I was thin. I was hungry. I was only a restlessness inside a woman's body. Above us, lightning split open the sky. Below us, wagon wheels cut the land in two. Around us were the soldiers, young and afraid, who did not trust us with scissors or knives, but with needles. Tear dresses, they were called, because settler cotton was torn in straight lines, like the roads we had to follow to Oklahoma. But when the cloth was torn, it was like tears, impossible to hold back, and so they were called by this other name, for our weeping. I remember the women. Tonight they walk out from the shadows with black dogs, children, the dark, heavy horses, and worn out men. They walk inside me. This blood is a map of the road between us. I am why they survived. The world behind them did not close. The world before them is still open. All around me are my ancestors, my unborn children. I am the tear between them, and both sides live.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. Move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots will be close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. My special music today is a song called The Lone Wild Bird. It is in our gray hymnal. The lone wild bird in lofty flight is still with thee, nor leaves thy sight. And I am thine, I rest in thee. Great Spirit, come and rest in me. The ends of the earth are in thy hand. The seas dark deep and far off land, and is still with thee, nor leaves thy side. We'll now have the offering for the work and the welfare of our church. Please go to our website, uutarpon.org, and click on the donate button, or send your checks to 57 Reed Street. The entire address is right there on your screen. And thank you. Our message of the day now comes from Reverend Kristina.
It was a hot mid-June day, a day I likely wanted to go swimming. But a course I was taking in seminary called Global Religions and Their Progressive Expressions had a requirement to participate in or witness an experience of another religious tradition. A worship service was a common choice, but it could be any event, service, or ceremony. I had plenty of options to choose from in Northeast Ohio and had planned on one, but asked on Facebook for recommendations or unusual activities that might also be interesting. A friend, a Lakota man I know, also a member of a UU church, said that he was going to be performing an adoption ceremony in a couple of weeks, and I was welcome to attend. The ceremony was that mid-June day, and I remember hoping that where we were going had air conditioning. We were all likely going to be a little uncomfortable. Once there, that was the last time I thought about it. We arrived, my husband at the time and I, and were welcomed into the house. I explained to someone that we had been invited by Bruce, my friend, and we were thanked for coming. Although no one ever really questioned why we were there, we were simply welcomed. In anticipation of the ceremony, we had brought tobacco and gave this to someone. People introduced themselves, offered us drinks, let us know where the bathroom was. Essentially everyone there that day was Indigenous, other than the young man to be adopted, his girlfriend, and some of his family who were present. A First Nations community formed among Lakota, Winnebago, Dakota, Onondaga, and other peoples to celebrate and share community together, practicing and honoring their ancient ways, and ancient ways made new. Or in this particular case, recreating them when they had been lost, stolen from them by genocide and assimilation into whiteness. My experience that day as someone very clearly an outsider to their cultures, their heritages, to their community, and their family was also one of true welcome and hospitality. My husband and I, either together or separate, were rarely left alone with no one to talk with in the community. I was brought into every conversation quickly, conversations about their work lives, about their family lives, about traveling to visit relatives and friends on reservations. And never once did I feel like I didn't belong, or that I wasn't welcome, or really that I wasn't an expected guest. My husband and I were included as participants in the adoption ceremony. A young white man who had been exploring and learning about his indigenous heritage, being adopted by the Lakota woman who had become his second mother. Everyone there received gifts, and we all shared in the food that people had brought, including many traditional foods, and we celebrated this beautiful event together. I was struck afterward not only by the ceremony, but obviously also by the hospitality. It was an unexpected gift. The power dynamics of my whiteness and absolute stranger status to all but one were of no concern, and I felt like I was a most welcome guest. Their hospitality was not pressured. It was seamless and natural. During this time together, we practiced care for each other, spoke Thanksgivings, experienced an important ritual, and reciprocity. For me, being able to experience this event and to share it with others. It was sometime in high school, I think, the first time I really learned about building a national identity. At the time, it was most likely with the French, as that was the language I had studied in school. And the French were among the first people to aggressively seek to codify their language, as well as their culture and identity. Over the course of a century or so, dominant culture French identity, centered in Paris, was forced upon the different regions within the country in an attempt to develop a singular identity, language, and nation state. This impacted various regions like Alsace-Lorraine, Basque, Brittany, and many others. France was particularly skilled at codifying the language and requiring it as the language of commerce, and when schools were started, requiring courses to be taught in them. French was the language of social mobility for people as well. The French Academy, the official authority on the French language, was founded in 1635. I remember hearing through word choice the laments of teachers and professors over the years of what had been lost in these efforts. I studied translation in college and graduate school, and there was some sadness expressed about the long-time languages essentially eradicated in many parts of the countries I learned about, in the name of commerce and race or ethnicity and class. About the last known speaker of a given language, unquestionably always a First Nations language, and how researchers were doing everything they could to record as much of it as possible before it was completely gone. Although not always with France's level of rigor, other developing nation states across Europe followed similar patterns for supremacy within their countries as well as their colonies, as did the United States. Cultural supremacy and what we white Europeans and Euro-Americans have often called civilization is actually a legacy of violence, destruction, and continually increasing militarization that permeates through all parts of our lives. Forced to confront their violently problematic histories with their colonies, at least enough for the so-called former colonies, once their own autonomous countries, to regain independence and autonomy, most European nations have been struggling, held accountable by their former colonies to the atrocities they've committed around the world on the cultures, languages, and in so many ways, the peoples and the lands they colonized. For a variety of complicated and simple reasons, the United States has not had such a reckoning forced on or in other ways engaged in any kind of reconciliation with the indigenous people of this land. The simplest reason being that white supremacy doesn't allow us to even recognize that what has happened here is ours to take responsibility for. Indigenous or First Nations peoples have been as disempowered, forcibly assimilated, and killed off through violence or illness as we, white people, have been able to accomplish. As tribes were separated from the lands of their ancestors and each other, and then their children taken from them as an additional step to separate them from their heritages, we further have divided and conquered. I had hoped to share more with you about the peoples indigenous to this area, only to find when I began my research that the Tocobaga people were, through violence and disease from the Spanish, and then chosen or forced assimilation into neighboring tribes or among the Spanish peoples as their numbers decreased, wiped out from the records of history around 300 years ago. What we do know is that they were skilled fishers and hunters, as well as gatherers and expert potters. They settled in the Tampa Bay area, but in a small area near the waters. Shells were used for many things, from making tools to building mounds. In these various ways, like other indigenous peoples throughout the continent, the Tocobaga appear to have been great stewards of the earth and its many life forms. Their various small chiefdoms appeared to have fought against each other, and what they called slaves were taken, often assigned to doing work others didn't want to do, although it is unclear how many, comparative to the general population, were taken, or that they were mistreated in the way African and African American slaves were. Because if we were to teach the histories of the peoples native to this land, we might become empathetic to what we white people have done and disrupt and perhaps even dismantle white supremacy altogether. Their stories are suppressed and often made to sound indistinguishable from each other. Indigenous peoples are spoken of in generalities and aspects of their cultures, languages, and other parts of their peoplehood. In many ways, the indigenous peoples of North America are as similar and not as those across any other continent: Asia, Europe, Africa, Australia. And yet there are some broad strokes we can use to speak about indigenous and First Nations peoples. For example, that they were usually strong stewards of the lands they lived on and treated life in all shapes and kinds with respect and care. The indigenous peoples of any particular region adapted to live in relationship with the resources available in their places and learned to understand the many unique beauties offered. Indigenous and First Nations peoples tend to live with intention and care for the world around them. In anticipation of this service, I started reading Braiding Sweetgrass: Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teachings of Plants by professor, poet, and citizen Potawatomi Nation member Robin Wall Kimmerer. In this work, she shares some perspective into how First Nations people think and dream, the way life and relationships are centered in their practices, and how they are powerful and distinct from a Euro-American understanding of the world. For example, Dr. Kimmerer writes, Lewis Hyde wonderfully illustrates the dissonance in his exploration of the term Indian giver. This expression, used negatively today as a pejorative for someone who gives something and then wants to have it back, actually derives from a fascinating cross-cultural misinterpretation between an indigenous culture operating in a gift economy and a colonial culture predicated on the concept of private property. When gifts were given to the settlers by the native inhabitants, the recipients understood that they were valuable and were intended to be retained. Giving them away would have been an affront. But the indigenous people understood the value of the gift to be based in reciprocity and would be affronted if the gifts did not circulate back to them. Many of our ancient teachings counsel that whatever we have been given is supposed to be given away again. She continues, from the viewpoint of a private property economy, the gift is deemed to be free because we obtain it free of charge, at no cost. But in the gift economy, gifts are not free. The essence of the gift is that it creates a set of relationships. The currency of a gift economy is, at its root, reciprocity. In Western thinking, private land is understood to be a bundle of rights, whereas in a gift economy, property has a bundle of responsibilities attached. Dr. Kimmerer reflects on the ways that gifts create relationships and a sense of stewardship of the gift. Because it has been given freely, the recipient must take particular care with it, honoring its inherent worth, respecting it, helping it proliferate, and keeping it moving, extending the web of relationships further. Anything exchanged as a gift grows in value as it is passed from one person to another. The world, then, becomes gifts in motion, she writes. Dr. Kimmerer also writes about the importance of Thanksgiving and honoring our relationships with each other and the world. And Thanksgiving is offered in care, words, rituals, and reciprocity. When we practice care, we offer Thanksgiving. When we call out to our ancestors, our people, any part of life, when we speak their sacred names, we offer Thanksgiving. When we create and practice rituals, we offer Thanksgiving. When we do the sacred work of engaging in deep relationship and reciprocity, we offer Thanksgiving. Reminding ourselves through care, words, rituals, and reciprocity, we embody our values, the ways we are connected with each other, the earth, and all that makes life. When things are particularly stressful, the news cycle trauma-inducing, and life more fast-paced than we can keep up with, it can be easy to say that these things aren't important and to want to skip them. But when we do this, we can lose ourselves and each other. Practicing rituals and reciprocity keeps us grounded and in the deep relationships that are both life-sustaining and life-giving. Something we need all the more when things are rough. It is the relationships with each other, with the land and water, plants and creatures that will last, survive, endure beyond this moment and the next and the next. When we recenter our lives in this way, we are given what we need, the care and strength to continue on. We might think that this is something that we must do to heal the earth, but the truth is that the earth is trying to heal us so that we might survive. And so we must do it for ourselves, for us all, so that we might live.
Our final hymn today is called We Are. It is in our teal hymn book. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreaming. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage and fathers of time. We are daughters of dust and citizens of great vision, sisters of mercy and brothers of love. We are lovers of life and the builders of nations, seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. It's time for our closing words and the extinguishing of our chalice.
In The Gift of Faith, Jean Harrison Newyar has written, in the lore of ancient China, there's a story of a philosopher who was asked, where is the road called hope? He replied, it does not exist, but as people move forward upon it, it comes into being. I invite you to move forward on this path, this journey called hope with me.